Reza ran through the thick forest with her child held tightly against her chest. Her long feet moved fast over the soft ground, but her heart moved faster. Every sound felt like danger. Every shadow looked like a hunter waiting to jump at her. She kept whispering to her little boy, Tillo, trying to calm him, but she could barely calm herself. The stories she had heard all her life were now living loudly in her mind. Humans were monsters. That was what her people always said. They were carnivorous, dangerous, unpredictable. They ate creatures, hunted anything that moved, and never cared what they hurt in the process. Reza believed these stories with all her heart. She had never seen a human before. But the fear lived inside her like a second heartbeat. And today, that fear became real. A few hours earlier, she had been gathering fruit near her small shelter when she heard a sound that shook the entire forest. The sky tore open with a screaming light, and something huge crashed into the ground not far from her. The animals fled. The trees shook. Smoke rose into the sky like a dark warning. Her first thought was to run. Her second was to hide. But then she remembered the old legends humans came. In metal ships. Humans fell from the sky. Humans landed on worlds they did not belong to, and those who lived nearby often did not survive. She grabbed her child and escaped as fast as she could. Now, after so much running, she reached a quiet area with thick trees and high bushes. Her lungs burned. Tillo squirmed in her arms, restless and curious. He was too young to understand the danger, too young to feel the fear that lived in her bones. She set him down gently, and he stood on his small feet, looking around with big, round eyes. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice sharp with fear. He nodded but immediately became distracted by a glowing insect floating near him. Reza reached for his hand, but he moved a couple of steps away, giggling at the insect. She wanted to smile at his innocence, but she couldn't. Her whole body was tense. Then she heard it. A sound she had never heard before. Metal scraping. A quiet human groan. Something heavy being dragged. Her blood froze. The human survived. She looked around and saw smoke rising just beyond the trees. She could hear movement between the bushes. Her instinct screamed, "Run. Hide. Protect your child." She grabbed Tillo's arm, but he slipped free. The insect flew away, and Tillo, being a curious child, chased after it. "Tillo," she whispered loudly, panic hitting her like a physical force. He toddled deeper into the trees, toward the direction of the crash. She reached for him, but he moved fast, laughing as if playing a harmless game. Reza felt sick. She followed him as quietly as she could, but her heart pounded so loud she feared everything in the forest could hear it. She pushed through a thick set of bushes, and her world stopped. Tillo stood only a short distance away from something huge. Something frightening. Something she never wanted to see in her life. A human. He was tall even though he was leaning forward, one knee on the ground. His dark suit was torn, smoke still drifting from it. His face was rough and tired. He held one hand to his side as if he was hurt. He breathed heavily, shaking from pain or exhaustion. He looked like a creature built for fighting, for chasing, for hunting. And her child, her tiny, soft, harmless child, stood right in front of him. Tillo didn't understand fear. He only saw a new creature. He looked up at the human as if he had discovered something marvelous. Reza wanted to run in and grab him. She wanted to scream. She wanted to fall apart. But she was frozen. Her breath stuck somewhere deep in her chest. The human looked at Tillo. Tillo looked back. For a moment, the whole world became silent. Then a sudden crack sounded from above, a weak branch breaking. A large piece of burnt metal hanging from a tree was about to fall. It swung toward the ground, heading straight for Tillo. The human moved instantly. He didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He didn't act like a predator. Instead, he threw himself forward, sliding across the ground to reach the child. He grabbed Tillo and pulled him close, just as the metal crashed where the child had been standing. Reza gasped. She felt her knees weaken. The human didn't harm her child. He saved him. Tillo blinked in confusion, then clung to the human's shirt, clearly shaken by the loud crash. The human held him gently, carefully, as if afraid to hurt him. Then he turned his head and saw Reza standing there. Reza trembled. She stepped back. She didn't know whether he saved Tillo for kindness or because he wanted to keep him for himself. The old stories screamed inside her head, fighting with the truth she had just witnessed with her own eyes. The human's expression softened when he saw her. He lowered himself slowly to one knee, making himself look smaller. He held the child out a little, not grabbing, not forcing, only offering. He spoke a few soft words in a language she didn't understand. His voice was gentle, too gentle for the monster she was taught to fear. Tillo reached back toward his mother. Reza moved forward quickly, taking her child into her arms. She held him so tightly he gave a small protest sound. But she could not help it. Tears filled her eyes not just from fear but from confusion. The human moved again, not toward them, but sideways, away from the wreckage. He winced, one hand holding his injured side. He looked weak, hurt, barely standing. Reza knew she should leave. Every instinct told her to run and never look back. But she didn't move. Something kept her feet planted on the ground. She watched the human as he staggered and tried to straighten up, but his legs shook. He looked at her again, eyes almost pleading not for help, but simply for understanding. Then, he collapsed onto the ground. Reza jumped at the sudden fall. Tillo gasped and reached his hand out again, worried in his small, innocent way. Reza didn't know what to do. She stepped forward, then backward. Her mind a storm of fear and questions. Was he truly dangerous? Was he pretending? Had he saved Tillo only so he could capture them later? Or was he simply wounded and alone? She looked down at Tillo. He wasn't crying. Instead, he looked concerned. He touched her cheek and pointed at the collapsed human. "Ma," he whispered softly. "He fall." Her heart twisted a little. She looked at the human again. His breathing was shallow. His skin had lost color. He didn't seem like a creature hunting for prey. He seemed like someone hanging on to life by a thread. Reza took a deep breath. Her whole body still shook. She stepped closer to him. A slow, painful step. Then another. She stopped just a few feet away from him. Her instincts screamed at her, but something stronger began to whisper in her mind. She had seen his actions. She had seen how he protected her child, and despite the terror that lived in her heart, she couldn't ignore that moment. The human had risked himself for Tillo. Reza knelt slowly, her hands still shaking. She reached out, not to touch him, but to check his breathing. She waited long seconds before pulling her hand back again. He wasn't pretending. He was truly injured. She closed her eyes. The old stories were loud, but the truth was louder. She whispered to Tillo, "Stay close, my child." Then, with trembling hands and a heart full of fear and courage, Reza made a decision she never believed she would make. She would not leave the human to die. Whether he was a monster or not, he had protected her child, and that changed everything. Reza sat beside the unconscious human, unsure whether her decision was wise or foolish. Her heart still beat fast, and her hands trembled slightly whenever she looked at him. He was so large compared to her people. His muscles, even while resting, looked strong enough to break a tree branch with one arm. The stories she had heard painted humans as unstoppable predators, but here he was weak, injured, and lying on the ground at her feet. Tillo crouched next to her, staring at the human with endless curiosity. He reached out to touch the man's boot, then his strange glove. Reza quickly pulled Tillo's hand back, shaking her head. Tillo made a small, disappointed sound, but didn't resist. She needed to move. Staying here, near the crash site, was dangerous. The explosion probably scared away animals, but it might attract raiders or other humans. And if she stayed too long, more dangers could come. Still, she couldn't leave the human behind. Not after what he had done. Reza took a deep breath and tried to think clearly. She checked the human again. His breathing was shallow but steady. His pulse felt weak, but it was there. His suit was torn, and there was a wound along his side where metal had pierced him. Dried blood covered part of his clothes. If she didn't help him soon, he might not survive the night. Her mind argued with itself. Take him and save him. Leave him and be safe. Do the right thing. Do the smart thing. Protect your child. Honor the life he saved. Tillo tugged on her arm and whispered, "Ma, he helped me." Those small, innocent words ended her confusion. Reza knelt beside the human and lifted his arm over her shoulder. She expected him to be impossibly heavy, but she was surprised, though he was much larger. She could move him if she used her strength carefully. She motioned for Tillo to stay close, as she dragged the human slowly toward a small cave hidden behind two leaning trees. It was where she sometimes rested during long walks. A dry shelter with natural stone walls, and a narrow entrance. Safe enough for the night. Hard enough for predators to enter. From here, she could hide and care for both her child and the human. It took all of Reza's strength to bring him inside. When she finally managed, she lowered him carefully to the ground. Her chest burned, her arms were sore, and sweat dripped down her forehead. But she didn't stop. She went to her small pouch and took out healing herbs, soft green leaves, and a bit of natural paste made from crushed moonflowers. Her people used these to clean and close wounds. She hesitated only once before touching his injured side. His skin felt warm, warmer than any creature she had ever touched. She cleaned the area gently with damp leaves. The human groaned softly in pain but didn't wake. His face twisted, his brow tightening as if he was fighting something in his sleep. Reza worked carefully, spreading the healing paste over the injury and covering it with a thin layer of plant fiber to keep it clean. Tillo watched everything with quiet wonder. He didn't understand the fear Reza carried, but he understood that the human had protected him. In his innocent mind, helping someone who helped them was simple, natural, obvious. When Reza finally finished treating him, she leaned back and exhaled deeply. She looked at the human's face for the first time, without panic. His features looked tired, but not threatening. His jaw was firm, his beard short. His closed eyes gave him a peaceful expression, so different from the terrifying image her people described. She whispered to herself, "Maybe he is not what we were taught." Night fell slowly. Inside the cave, she made a small, safe light, using a glowing stone. Tillo curled up next to her, but he kept glancing at the human as if waiting for him to wake. Reza stroked Tillo's hair gently, trying to keep him calm, though she herself felt far from calm. Hours passed before the human stirred. Reza tensed immediately. She covered Tillo protectively with her arm. The man groaned, turned his head slightly, and then opened his eyes. They were dark, tired, but full of awareness. He looked confused for a moment, trying to understand where he was. Then he noticed Reza and Tillo watching him from the corner. Reza's heart raced, but she kept still. If he panicked, if he moved too fast, she would grab Tillo and flee. She was ready for anything. The human slowly raised his hand, palm open, showing that he meant no harm. His voice came out soft and rough. "It's okay." She didn't understand his words, but she understood the gesture. An open hand meant peace in many cultures. He then pointed to himself and said his name very clearly. "Marcus." Reza blinked. The sound was strange, sharp, almost heavy. But she realized what he was doing. She placed her hand on her chest and said her own name. Reza. Marcus repeated it softly. Reza, trying not to mispronounce it. Reza felt a tiny warmth in her chest. She didn't know why, but hearing her name from a human made her feel unexpectedly seen. Then Marcus pointed gently at Tillo. Reza hesitated for a long moment, but eventually she whispered, Tillo. Marcus smiled faintly, tired but appreciative. Tillo, he repeated softly, and the child grinned back. Tillo, having no fear at all, crawled a little closer. Reza moved her hand to stop him, but Marcus shook his head gently and raised his open hand again to show he wouldn't hurt him. Tillo reached Marcus's hand and touched his fingers. Marcus let him explore the strange texture of his glove, patient and gentle. Reza watched this carefully. Every moment of kindness chipped away at the terror she carried. Marcus then tried to sit up, but gasped in pain. Reza reacted immediately, pressing her hand toward him to signal he should lie back down. He looked at her with gratitude and eased himself back. He pointed to his wound, then to her healing paste. His eyebrows lifted in surprise. You helped me, he whispered. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the emotion. He wasn't angry. He wasn't suspicious. He was grateful. Reza looked away for a moment, unsure how to react. Helping a human was something her people would never believe. But she had done it anyway. Marcus tried to communicate more. He used gestures, pointing upward toward the sky and mimicking an explosion with his hands. Reza nodded slowly. She understood he was explaining how he crashed. He pressed his hand against his chest, showing pain. Then he pointed at Tillo with concern, remembering the falling metal. Reza watched closely. His face didn't change into anything dark or threatening when he remembered her child. Instead, he looked almost relieved that Tillo was safe. She finally pointed to Marcus's wound, then made a gesture, meaning, rest. Marcus nodded, understanding that she wanted him to stay still. The cave grew quiet again. Tillo eventually fell asleep in Reza's lap. Marcus rested with his eyes closed, breathing slowly. Reza sat awake for a long time, watching the flickering stone light and thinking about everything that had happened. Her beliefs were breaking one by one. Humans hunt everything. But this human shielded her child. Humans are cold-hearted. But this human showed kindness and gratitude. Humans bring danger. But this human seemed alone, injured, and far from home. Reza didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But one thing became clear: she could no longer see Marcus as a monster. Not after what she had seen. She whispered into the quiet cave, almost as if speaking to herself. Maybe. You are not here to harm us. Marcus didn't respond. He had fallen into a deep, exhausted sleep. Reza pulled Tillo closer and looked at the human one more time. For the first time, she didn't feel overwhelming fear. She felt something new. Cautious hope. A small, fragile hope that maybe the universe was bigger and kinder than the stories she had been told. And without knowing it, that night became the beginning of a bond that would change all their lives forever. Morning arrived slowly, with soft light touching the cave walls. Reza opened her eyes after only a little rest. Tillo slept curled against her chest, breathing softly. For a moment, everything felt peaceful, until she remembered the injured human, lying only a few steps away. Marcus. He was still sleeping, his chest rising gently. The healing paste she applied had dried into a thin layer, holding the wound closed. His breathing seemed stronger than last night. Reza studied him quietly, surprised by how calm she felt now. Fear was still inside her, but not as sharp. Something else was beginning to grow, a strange sense that this human was not the creature the stories warned her about. Tillo woke up with a small yawn and immediately sat up to look at Marcus. The child crawled closer, poking the human's boot. Reza quickly pulled Tillo back, whispering for him to be gentle. But Marcus opened his eyes at that moment and gave a small smile. Tillo froze, then giggled. Marcus lifted a hand slowly and waved. His movements were careful, as if he didn't want to frighten either of them. Reza felt her heart squeeze with caution, but she nodded slightly to show she understood his peaceful intentions. He tried to sit up again, and this time he managed with less pain. He placed a hand on his side and looked at the healing paste carefully. Then, he glanced at Reza, with clear gratitude in his eyes. Reza swallowed and looked away, unsure how to receive such a look. Marcus used gestures, placing his hand on his chest and nodding toward her. Reza understood he was thanking her. She gave a small nod in return. This silent communication felt strange, but warming. He pointed at the cave entrance, then made a cautious "danger around," a gesture with his hands. Reza understood again. He wanted to know if the outside was safe. She listened carefully but heard no threats, only the wind moving through the trees. She shook her head softly, signaling calm. Marcus relaxed a little. Tillo crawled forward again, and this time Reza let him. The child sat near Marcus, touching the human's glove again with innocent curiosity. Marcus let him explore without pulling away. He even gently tapped the ground with one finger to make a soft rhythm that made Tillo laugh. Reza watched silently, feeling something warm build inside her chest. A gentle connection was forming between her child and a creature she once believed was dangerous. Marcus then lifted his hand slowly and pointed at Reza. He formed a simple shape with his fingers, like a mouth speaking, to show he wanted to learn her language. Reza hesitated, but finally pointed to herself again and said her name slowly. Reza. Marcus repeated it more clearly this time, making her feel strangely proud. Tillo slapped his little hand on his chest and announced loudly, "Tillo!" Marcus laughed softly, repeating, "Tillo," and the child clapped happily. Reza felt her fear slowly melting. A few days ago, she would never imagine sharing a cave with a human. Now, she was teaching him words. They needed food. The cave had none. Reza checked her small satchel and found only a few dried berries. Not enough for all three. She stood up and prepared to go outside. Marcus noticed and pointed uncertainly to the forest. Then back to her, as if asking if she was safe. She nodded, pressing a hand gently to reassure him, but Marcus seemed uncomfortable letting her go alone. He pointed at himself and tried to stand, but pain shot through him. Reza shook her head firmly, raising her hand to keep him down. He wasn't ready. She couldn't risk him making the wound worse. Tillo stayed with Marcus, playing with a small stone. Reza went outside, carefully, gathering more berries and filling her pouch. The forest felt calmer now. Maybe because she wasn't running anymore. Maybe because she no longer felt alone. When she returned, Marcus looked relieved. He sat quietly, while she handed Tillo some berries and placed a few beside the human. Marcus lifted one, examined it carefully, then looked at Reza with a questioning expression. Was it safe? She nodded and ate one herself to show him. Marcus followed, chewing slowly. His face relaxed at the simple taste. After they ate, Marcus tried again to communicate. He pointed upward at the sky, then mimicked flames and smoke. He tried to explain his crash. Reza understood he came from somewhere far away. He wasn't here to hunt. He wasn't here to hurt anyone. Something had gone terribly wrong, and he crashed onto her world by accident. Reza wanted to ask more, but she didn't know his words. So she used gestures instead. She made a circle shape around her body, her home. Then she pointed to different directions, showing the forest, the raiders, the dangers. Marcus watched carefully, piecing together what she meant. His expression shifted when she mimicked the raiders, the ones who had attacked her village before. He pointed at them with a hard, serious look, then pointed at himself in a protective gesture. He wanted to help. Reza froze. Could she trust him? A human warrior helping her people? The idea seemed impossible. Her people would panic if they saw him. They would run from him, or try to attack him. Even though he meant no harm, they would see him as a threat. Marcus sensed her worry. He raised both hands, showing understanding. He wasn't pushing her. He simply wanted her to know he would help, if needed. She appreciated the gesture more than she expected. As the day passed, Marcus gained more strength. Reza helped him stand for a few moments, supporting him with her shoulder. He was heavy, but he tried not to lean too hard. Tilo walked proudly beside them, as if guiding them both. They spent hours practicing simple words and signs. Marcus learned the words for food, water, safe, danger, and sleep. Reza learned his word for friend. When he pointed at her and repeated, "friend," her heart warmed in a way she didn't understand. Tilo adopted the word immediately, pointing at Marcus and shouting, "Friend." Marcus laughed again, and Reza felt peace in a place where fear once lived. Later in the afternoon, they heard a distant noise, shouting voices, rough steps, and the sound of branches breaking. Reza immediately grabbed Tilo and pulled him close. Marcus stiffened, listening carefully. It was raiders. She trembled. They were moving through the forest, searching someone or something. Maybe they saw the crash. Maybe they were looking for survivors to steal from. Reza panicked, not wanting them to find Marcus in such a weak state. They would either hurt him or capture him. Marcus pressed his finger against his lips, "Stay silent." They moved to the back of the cave, hiding behind a pile of stones. Tilo tucked under Reza's arm, and Marcus crouched beside them, ready to protect despite his injury. The voices grew closer. Reza held her breath. Then she felt something unexpected, Marcus placing a steady hand on her arm. He was telling her not to be afraid. Somehow, his touch calmed her more than any words could. Even injured, he was ready to protect them. The loud footsteps passed by the cave but did not enter. After many long minutes, the sounds faded. Reza collapsed in relief, and Tilo buried his face against her chest. Marcus lowered his head, breathing heavily, the stress clearly affecting his wound. Reza quickly checked him, worried he had pushed himself too far. He gave her a tired smile to show he was fine. When everything felt safe again, Tilo crawled to Marcus and placed his small hand over the man's heart. It was a simple gesture, one only a child would give pure trust. Marcus placed his hand gently over Tilo's, his eyes softening. Reza watched them, realizing she was witnessing something rare. A bond forming between two beings from different worlds. A bond stronger than fear, stronger than old legends. As night returned, she felt something inside her shift. She didn't see Marcus as a monster anymore. She didn't see him as a threat. He had become something else entirely. He had become part of their small, fragile family. And deep inside her heart, she knew this bond would soon change everything, not just for her and Tilo, but for her whole village. When the sun rose the next morning, Reza woke up with a heavy feeling. The night had been quiet, but the memory of the raiders passing by their cave stayed in her mind. She looked toward Marcus, who sat near the cave entrance with his back against the wall. He was awake, alert, and clearly thinking about something serious. His wound still troubled him, but his posture showed determination. He was gaining strength little by little each day, and now he seemed ready to do something more than just recover. Tilo crawled toward Marcus, rubbing his sleepy eyes. When he reached the human, he leaned against Marcus's leg and rested there, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Marcus placed a gentle hand on Tilo's head, and Reza watched the quiet moment with a warm heart. But she knew danger was close. The raiders were getting bolder. If they found the cave, they would harm all three of them. And if they reached her village again, many innocent people would suffer. Marcus sensed her worry. He pointed toward the forest, then at the cave, then made a circle with his hand, a gesture meaning, "The danger is around us." Reza nodded sadly. Marcus then pointed at himself, his expression serious. He tapped his chest with determination. He wanted to help fight them. Reza froze. The idea scared her. Marcus was still injured. He was only one person, and her people feared humans more than anything, so they would not easily accept him. But the truth she could not deny was simple: without help, her village could not stop the raiders. They were strong, armed, and cruel. Her people were gentle farmers. Every attack left them weaker. Marcus understood her hesitation. He placed his hand over his wound, showing he knew he wasn't fully healed. Then he pointed to Reza and Tilo, then to the forest. He spread his arms, as if to say he didn't want harm to reach them. Then, he pointed to himself again. He would protect them. He would protect everyone. Reza looked away, tears almost filling her eyes. She had never met anyone, not even from her own kind, who showed such immediate loyalty. But Marcus had done it again and again. He saved Tilo. He trusted her. He helped them hide. He guarded them when raiders passed by. His actions spoke louder than any words. She finally nodded, slowly but firmly. Marcus gave a small, relieved smile. They spent the rest of the morning preparing. Marcus needed something to fight with. His damaged weapon was almost useless. But he managed to repair a small part of it using metal pieces from his crashed ship. It wouldn't fire many shots, but it would help. Reza also gathered long wooden branches that Marcus could sharpen into spears. Tilo tried to copy them, picking up a tiny stick and waving it proudly. Marcus laughed softly, shaking his head. Reza pulled Tilo close, reminding him he must stay behind her when danger comes. When they were ready, Marcus made a simple map in the dirt. Reza pointed out where her village was, where the raiders' old camp had been, and where the river ran. Marcus understood quickly. He circled the areas where raiders usually moved. Then, he tapped a small spot between the forest and the village. He had a plan. Reza felt both nervous and hopeful. She gathered courage, picked up Tilo, and led Marcus toward her village. It was a long walk, but the forest felt different now. She didn't feel alone. She didn't feel helpless. Marcus walked behind her with quiet steps, ready for anything. When they reached the edge of the village, Reza hesitated. She looked back at Marcus. His face was serious, but calm. He nodded gently, signaling that he understood he must be cautious. Reza carried Tilo forward while Marcus stayed among the trees, waiting for her signal. The villagers saw her returning and hurried over. Their faces changed when they noticed her tense expression. They whispered among themselves, asking where she had been, but their expressions turned into fear when they saw Marcus slowly walking out from behind the trees. The villagers gasped. Some ran for their homes. A few grabbed farming tools to defend themselves. Mothers pulled children behind them. The old stories about humans awakened instantly in their minds. Reza stood between Marcus and the villagers, raising her hands to calm them. But the fear was deep. Some villagers shouted warnings, telling her to step away from him. Others begged her to run, before the human hurt her and Tilo. Reza's voice shook, but she spoke louder than she had ever spoken before. She explained through gestures and simple words how Marcus saved Tilo from falling metal, how he protected them from the raiders, how he was injured, and how she healed him, and how he wanted to help protect the village. The villagers were confused. Their eyes moved from Reza to Marcus and back again. They didn't know what to believe. The sided Messivrauner, their Givernhell says, their Wanajing Sisant, their Wanajing Sevens. Marcus watched silently. He slowly removed his gloves, showing his empty hands. Then he lowered his weapon to the ground and stepped back, giving them space. His actions showed he was not there to harm anyone. Reza placed a hand on her heart, then pointed at Marcus. Friend. The words seemed to echo through the quiet village. Slowly, the villagers' fear softened. They whispered among themselves. Some remained afraid, but others looked closer and saw the truth. They saw the injured man, who stood with calm eyes and gentle hands. Not a monster, not a predator, but a protector. Before anyone could say more, a loud scream came from the far side of the village. Raiders. They rushed in with heavy boots and rough shouts. The villagers panicked, running in different directions. Some raiders began to grab supplies, while others tried to capture villagers. Reza grabbed Tillo and hid behind a wooden fence. Marcus reacted instantly. His protective instincts awakened like fire. He sprinted forward, his weapon raised. The raiders, surprised to see a human fighting on the villagers' side, hesitated for a moment. That moment was enough. Marcus fired a warning shot into the air. The loud sound echoed like thunder, making the raiders jump back. Then he used the skills of a trained soldier, rolling, dodging, striking. He moved with precision that no villager had ever witnessed. Reza watched in awe as Marcus used a long wooden spear to knock a raider off his feet. Then he guided a group of villagers, using hand gestures to help them block the path to protect children and elders. Everything about his movements showed strength, experience, and fierce loyalty. One raider tried to sneak behind Reza. Marcus saw it immediately and shouted a warning gesture. Reza ducked, grabbing a long stick from the ground to defend herself. The raider lunged, but Marcus reached them in time, pushing the attacker away and standing guard over Reza and Tilo like a shield. The villagers finally found courage in Marcus's bravery. They began to fight back, using stones, sticks, and anything they could find. Under Marcus's direction, they formed a simple defense line. The raiders, unprepared for such organized resistance, grew frustrated. After a short but intense clash, the raiders fled back into the forest, leaving the village shaken but safe. When the danger was gone, the villagers looked at Marcus with new eyes, not with fear but with deep respect. Marcus lowered his spear and breathed heavily. Reza approached him slowly, Tillo holding her hand. Her eyes filled with gratitude. She placed her hand over her heart and then lightly touched Marcus's arm. A simple gesture, but one filled with meaning. He saved them, all of them. Tillo ran to Marcus and hugged his leg tightly, trusting him with all his small heart. Marcus knelt carefully and patted Tillo's back, smiling with quiet warmth. The villagers gathered around. One by one, they lowered their heads respectfully. They understood now. The old stories were wrong. Humans were not monsters, not all of them. And this human had risked everything to keep them safe. Reza stood beside Marcus, feeling a strange new strength inside her. She was no longer afraid. She had seen enough to know the truth. Marcus was not a predator. He was a protector. Their protector. As the day settled and peace returned to the village, Reza realized something important. Meeting Marcus had changed their lives forever. Not because he came from another world, but because he showed them something rare: courage without cruelty, strength without harm, and compassion that crossed every difference between their species. And in the quiet sunset, with Tillo laughing beside them, Reza understood one last thing. She had not just found safety, she had found hope.